She said it like canceling a dentist appointment, and that's how my daughter cut me out of her life.
I paid for that ticket. They just erased me from the flight like I never existed.
I checked my voicemail and heard her voice. My daughter, my only child. Hey, Dad, you're not coming. My husband doesn't want you there. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She said it the same way you'd cancel a dentist appointment. That's how I found out I was uninvited from their honeymoon send-off. The flight I booked, the trip I paid for. I sat there holding the phone like it was covered in glass. This story gets more shocking than you'd ever expect. Before we continue, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what would you do if your own child cut you off like this? My name is Frank Marino. I'm 58 years old. I live in Toledo, Ohio, not far from the old Jeep plant. The smokestacks are mostly quiet now, but on windy nights, you can still smell a ghost of hot oil and steel. Been here my whole life. Raised my daughter, Sophia, here too. She was the only thing I did right after my marriage fell apart. Her mother left when Sophia was 12. I remember the night, February, slush on the driveway, a U-Haul idling at the curb. She said she needed space, but what she meant was another life. I didn't fight it. I just stayed behind with our little girl. I never talked bad about her mother. Not once. My job was to be steady, to show up. And I did. Every soccer game on chilly Saturday mornings when my breath turned white. Every science fair in gyms that smelled like wax and popcorn. Every dentist appointment. The boring ones where you wait under buzzing fluorescent lights. When Sophia turned 16, I bought her first car. A dented silver Honda Civic with a cracked mirror and one key. She cried when I slid the title across the kitchen table, hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would snap. She said she'd never forget what I'd done for her, but memories fade fast, especially when someone else starts whispering in your ear. The last time we talked face to face was 2 weeks before that voicemail. A Sunday dinner, my house smelling of tomato, paste, and onions because I'd made meatloaf, her childhood favorite. Sophia arrived in a beige coat, Craig behind her in a blazer too sharp for my modest dining room. He wrinkled his nose when he stepped inside, like he'd smelled damp wood. My house is small, but it's clean. The walls are lined with family photos. Sophia's soccer trophies, prom pictures, the time we went to Cedar Point, and she wore mouse ears. Craig barely touched his plate. Watching my macros, he said, like the word macros was a spell. He called my place quaint, ran his eyes across the photos like they were thrift store junk someone forgot to throw away. Still, I tried to like him. For her, he worked in finance, wore expensive cologne with a citrus bite, smiled too wide like someone auditioning. When he shook hands, he only offered fingers, no weight behind the grip. He said things like, "Let's circle back, and optics matter," as if normal conversation needed a marketing plan. That night I told Sophia she looked happy. She squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thanks, Dad." I wanted to believe it. The week after, she called, sounding electric. "Dad, we booked our honeymoon. Bahamas, first class. You'll love the airport lounge. We'll check in together." I didn't ask about the cost. Didn't ask if Craig's parents chipped in. I just told her I'd cover the flights. A wedding gift. She hesitated a second. Just long enough for me to wonder if Craig was on speaker, then said, "Thanks, Dad. That's huge." That same afternoon, I logged into my savings, clicked transfer funds, watched 2,172's $80 leave my account with one hollow pain. 2 days later, a confirmation email arrived, 3 tickets, all under Craig G. Langston. Mine was listed last, middle seat, no assignment yet. I didn't mind. Figured they'd arrange details later. Then came silence. I texted, "Hey, all set for the trip?" No reply. Next day, need me to print boarding passes? Nothing. Then the voicemail, not a call. A voicemail. "Hey, Dad, you're not coming. My husband doesn't want you there. It's Complicated. Please don't make this harder. And that was it. No explanation, no apology, not even a goodbye. I sat frozen on my couch, phone buzzing quietly in my palm. Played the message 3 times, listening for any trace of love. None. Just clean, cold rejection. It felt like someone had reached into my chest and unhooked a wire. I wasn't just uninvited. I was removed. That night, I sat on the back porch with a tumbler of bourbon. Wind cut across the yard, sharp enough to sting. March in Ohio is raw. Wet air, mud underfoot, trees nothing but black bone. My dog Buck curled beside me, head on my boot, watching me with worried brown eyes. I didn't sleep. At 2 a.m., I opened the flight email again. Something itched at me. A warehouse man's itch, the kind that kept me from signing bad invoices for 30 years. The payment hadn't gone to the airline directly. It routed through Gold Line Travel, authorized reseller. Strange. Morning came pale and weak. I called the airline. "Sir," the rep said after a hold, "your seat was canceled yesterday. You'll need to speak to the booking agent for a refund." "Canceled?" My voice cracked. "Yes, sir. Canceled by the primary account holder." Craig, it hit me like cold water. They'd used my money, kept their seats, erased me from the booking. I tried calling Sophia. Straight to voicemail. "Sophia, I don't know what's going on. I'm not angry. Just confused. Please call me." No call back. 3 days later, I opened Facebook to check if she'd posted honeymoon photos. Her profile was gone. Blocked. Blocked by my own daughter. The digital slap burned hotter than any shouted argument. I told no one. Not coworkers, not my bowling buddies, not even my sister. Some pain you hide because saying it out loud feels like confessing weakness. One night, I pulled out old photo albums, fingers sticky with dust and age. There she was at 16, hugging me after I handed her that Honda key. Her smile then could have powered the sun. I stared until my eyes blurred, but the longer I sat, the more tiny memories crawled out. Craig saying, "We'll handle finances privately." Sophia flinching when I offered mortgage help. Sunday calls dwindling after he moved in. Small cuts I'd ignored because I loved her. Warehouse habits kicked in. I'd always kept receipts, literal and figurative. You don't clock in without paper proof. I started digging. Wedding folder, invoices, payment slips. 18th 440 total. 3 installments. Venue, Franklin Hall. Catering, $100. Open bar, $100. Dress alterations, $960. Not one reimbursement. Not one thank you beyond a short handwritten line. "Thanks, Dad. Love you." Meanwhile, Craig's parents got a glossy 2-paragraph note about making our dreams possible. I felt invisible at my own kid's wedding. Next morning, I visited the bank. "Can I get a printout of all recent transfers?" I asked the teller. She smiled politely, but her eyes flicked, curious. Paper slid warm from the printer. March 2nd, transfer to Gold Line Travel. 2072 March 6th. Withdrawal by G. Langston. Paper $100 G. Langston. Craig's full name is Gregory Langston Craig. He'd used his middle name. Clever. Harder to trace if you weren't looking. I made copies of everything. Stapled the transfer to the flight email. Labeled a new manila folder in black marker. Canceled ticket. Sophia. I didn't know what I was building, but instinct said, document everything. Don't delete. Don't trust. That afternoon, I drove downtown to the Lucas County Courthouse. The stone steps were slick with leftover snow. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed above rows of chairs. "Need to update my will," I told the clerk. Cool click of keyboard keys. Printer whirring. I struck Sophia's name from the primary beneficiary list, shifted everything, house, savings, retirement, to a local animal rescue she'd volunteered at when she was 15, back when her heart was wide open. The clerk asked if I wanted her notified. "Not yet," I said. "She'll find out." Signing the papers, my hand didn't even tremble. I felt steady. Colder, maybe, but steady. Walking out, I passed a young couple arguing by the curb. Her eyes were red, His hands were fists. I kept walking, but something inside me clicked into place. A strange calm. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I just began to record. If they wanted a quiet exclusion, they were about to meet a man who knows how to build a case. The silence stretched longer than I expected. 5 days passed, then 6. Still no call from Sophia. I'd stopped leaving messages. Stopped hoping, too. At first I told myself she was busy, maybe embarrassed, maybe just caught up in honeymoon packing. But with every empty day, the lie thinned until it couldn't hold. I kept working my regular shifts at the auto parts warehouse, showed up on time, scanned my badge, lifted crates until my shoulders ached, nodded to the same guys on the line, Carl with his crooked ball cap, Ben chewing toothpicks like it was a job. But something in me was off. I moved slower, dropped bolts, forgot the part codes I'd known for years. Every time my phone buzzed in my pocket, a jolt of hope hit me. Maybe this is her. Maybe she finally has the decency to explain. But it never was. Spam calls, bank notifications, political robocalls asking for $5 to save the country. The world kept moving, and my daughter, she'd already boarded a plane without me. That Sunday I did something I hadn't planned. I drove to the airport. I told myself it was just curiosity, a way to rip off the bandage. But truthfully, I needed to know if the betrayal was real, to see it with my own eyes. Toledo Express was half empty. A steady gray rain drummed on the skylights, turning the tile floors slick. I parked in the economy lot, pulled my hood up, walked inside with my hands shoved deep into my jacket. The terminal smelled like wet coats and burnt coffee. Announcements echoed thinly in the hollow space. I felt invisible in the small Sunday crowd. Business travelers hunched over laptops, parents wrangling kids with tiny rolling bags. I didn't expect to see them, but I did. There they were. Sophia in a beige trench coat, rolling a floral suitcase I'd seen once in her hallway. Craig in a navy polo, expensive luggage behind him, sipping Starbucks like he owned the place. They looked like a magazine ad for young power couple escapes to paradise. Perfectly dressed, perfectly rehearsed. They didn't see me. Or maybe they didn't look. They moved with easy confidence toward the premier access counter. No hesitation, no guilt in their posture. Craig handed passports to the agent while Sophia scrolled her phone. He leaned in, kissed her forehead. She smiled softly, the way she used to smile at me. My stomach tightened so hard I felt nauseous. I didn't confront them, didn't call her name, didn't want to cause a scene in a place filled with strangers, didn't want to hear her say it again, to my face this time, that I wasn't wanted. Instead, I watched from a distance, anchored to the cold tile floor. They moved through security, laughing at something on his phone, gone in seconds. I turned away. The drive home was silent. No radio, no podcasts, just the hiss of tires on wet asphalt. Rain streaked across the windshield in long, trembling lines. Something broke in me on that drive. Not anger, not even sadness. Something colder. Clarity. Like stepping out of a fog into night air that bites. That night, after Buck curled under the kitchen table to wait for scraps I didn't have, I opened the manila folder again. Canceled ticket. Sophia. I wrote the date, March 22nd. I wrote the time I'd seen them, Gate C3, 9:15 a.m. I added a note, observed departure, no contact. Then I pulled out a second folder, fresh, stiff, clean. Labeled it in black marker, inheritance documents, revision. I gathered every file I had from the last estate attorney meeting, bank account summaries, retirement statements, the house deed. Trust clauses I'd paid extra to set up so Sophia would never fight through probate. When I divorced her mother, I'd fought to keep things clean and simple. No messy settlements. No bitterness dragged through court. I wanted everything neat so Sophia's future would be protected. That was the plan. But people change, or maybe they finally show you who they've been all along. 2 days after the airport, a letter slid through my mail slot. Birthday card. My birthday's still a week away. The envelope was cream-colored, machine-printed. No return address. Inside, a plain Hallmark card. Empty except for a $25 Starbucks gift card glued neatly to the inside. No note, no signature. Not even happy birthday, Dad. I turned the card over, recognized the small barcode sticker. Craig's office uses the same mailing software for corporate thank yous. That was it. That was my daughter's acknowledgement of the man who'd raised her, paid for her wedding, paid for a honeymoon ticket he never got to use. I don't even drink coffee. Haven't since '98 when ulcers taught me the hard way. It felt like a mockery. I taped the card inside the folder beside the canceled flight receipt. Another piece of evidence, another silent page. The following week, I made an appointment with my estate lawyer, Mrs. Deering. Tidy desk, tidy hair, eyes that miss nothing. She read the new instructions carefully, then looked up at me. "Are you sure about removing your daughter?" I nodded once. Didn't trust my voice to stay steady. She didn't push. Just turned pages, slid signature tabs my way. The scratch of my pen on paper sounded louder than anything else in the room. By law, I didn't have to notify Sophia. So I didn't. When we finished, she gathered the papers with quiet efficiency. "All set," she said softly, maybe kindly. I carried the folder home, locked it in my filing cabinet between old tax returns and car titles. Metal latch clicked shut. Final. Days blurred after that. Ohio spring limped in. Cold wind. Stubborn gray clouds. Trees slow to bloom. Work stayed the same. Warehouse hum. Forklifts whining. The smell of cardboard and grease. Life kept moving even when your heart didn't. Some nights I'd take Buck down to the riverfront. He'd run across the muddy bank, tail wagging like the world was still good. Dogs don't need explanations. They just stay. Other nights I'd drive with no destination, headlights cutting, through drizzle. Old classic rock on low volume. Thinking, replaying, wondering if there was a single moment I could rewind and fix. One night I scrolled through my voicemail archive and found an old message from Sophia, nearly a year old. "Hey Dad, I made that lasagna you like. Craig said it needs more cheese, but I think it's perfect. You'd be proud." Her voice back then was warm, teasing, light, familiar. I played it 3 times, alone in the dark kitchen. Didn't delete it, didn't save it either. Just let it hover. Half memory, half ghost. About 3 weeks later, the story shifted. A letter from my credit card company, fraud alert. 2 brand new iPhones purchased on my account, shipped to an address I didn't recognize. My pulse spiked as I dialed the number on the back of the card. The rep walked me through it, said the order was online. A new shipping address added under a secondary user profile. I'd never made a secondary user. "Name on that profile?" I asked. She paused, reading. G. Langston. Craig. That was the crack in the dam. This wasn't just hurt feelings anymore. It was theft. Calculated, quiet theft. I filed a fraud report that night, closed the account, issued a new card. Then I printed every email, every statement, every alert, stapled them together, slid them into the canceled ticket folder until it bulged. Next morning, I called Mrs. Deering again. This time it wasn't about inheritance. "I think someone's using my identity," I said. She listened without interrupting. Finally, "Keep gathering proof. Don't confront. If it escalates, we'll have leverage." I was already gathering. Every paper a nail, every receipt a beam. The week after that, I drove to the county clerk's office, pulled property transfer records, something I'd never done before but knew existed, typed my own parcel ID into the public database. Nothing unusual. Then I typed Craig's full name, and there it was. A recent inquiry into my parcel ID number, requested online, time-stamped exactly 2 weeks before the voicemail. He'd been scouting my house, checking ownership, planning. The betrayal wasn't random. It was deliberate, from the wedding expenses to the canceled ticket to the silent Starbucks birthday card. Craig had been pulling strings, lining things up to cut me out while keeping his hands clean. Because you can't manipulate a man who keeps receipts. But a daughter in love, scared, emotionally tangled, she's easier to guide. I sat in my truck outside the clerk's office, engine idling. Railroad tracks ran beside the parking lot. A train horn moaned somewhere down the line, low and mournful. Red crossing lights blinked in the dusk. I stayed there a long time, breathing slow, letting the truth harden. I knew what I had to do. Not scream, not beg, not confront. I had to show her, not with speeches, with paper, with proof, with silence heavy enough to shake them both. So I started writing, dates, transactions, screenshots, voicemails transcribed by hand. I built a story, not to tell, but to present. If Craig thought I was a quiet man, easy to erase, he hadn't met the version of me who kept 30 years of ledgers without losing a single slip. He hadn't met the father who raised a girl alone and learned to survive disappointment with discipline. This wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was preparation. It took her 4 days. 4 long, echoing days before Sophia finally called. The ringtone startled me. I'd been sitting on the back porch again, the same weathered boards creaking under my boots, watching wind stir the dead leaves across the driveway. The sun was bleeding out behind the neighbor's roofline, orange light slipping like paint through the slats of the fence. My bourbon glass sweated in my hand. Buck's slow breathing was the only sound. The phone buzzed once on the table beside me. Unknown number for a second, then her name. I froze. For one heartbeat, I didn't move, afraid the sound would stop if I reached too quickly. I answered. Her voice was quiet, almost hollow, as if every word had to crawl past regret to get out. "Dad, can we talk?" I swallowed. Always. She came over that evening. No careful makeup, no binder or planner under her arm, no click of wedding heels on the porch, just sweatpants, sneakers, and a gray hoodie that hung off her small frame like she wanted to hide inside it. Her hair was unwashed, pulled into a lopsided bun. She looked younger and older, all at once. Buck gave one sharp bark, tail thumping uncertainly, then settled back down by my chair. She hovered at the threshold for a full minute, eyes darting from the doorframe to the porch floorboards, before stepping inside. We didn't hug. I gestured toward the kitchen. "Coffee?" She shook her head quickly, almost flinched. "No." I sat. She stayed standing, arms folded tight across her stomach. It felt like we were strangers occupying a house built from my memories. Birthday banners still stuffed in drawers, walls lined with her childhood photos, the faint smell of machine oil from my work boots drying by the door. "I didn't know," she said finally, voice frayed. "About the phones, about the credit card. He told me you gave us permission." I let the silence hang, said nothing, just watched her. She rubbed both hands over her face, fingers trembling like she hadn't slept in days. I believed him. God, I was so stupid. Still, I said nothing. Let the quiet stretch until it became heavy. Sometimes silence tells the truth better than anger ever could. Her shoulders sagged. She stared at the floorboards. "He said you were unstable, that you were trying to control me, that you didn't want me to be happy." I looked at her then. Really looked, eyes red-rimmed and swollen, hands shaking just enough to betray fear. My little girl who once begged me to hold the bike steady while she learned to ride, now looking like she couldn't stand upright without apologizing to the walls. "I never said those things," I said at last, low and steady. "But I don't need to defend myself. You already made your choice." Tears pooled at the edges of her eyes. "I didn't choose him. I just didn't want to fight." That one pierced deeper than any accusation could, because it was honest. I knew that silence, the kind that grows when you fold and fold and fold until there's nothing left of yourself. I'd lived it in my marriage. I recognized it now in my daughter. "What changed?" I asked quietly. She hesitated, drew a shaky breath. Her mouth opened once, closed, then finally, "He slapped me." The sentence hit harder than any storm ever rattled this porch. A single blunt truth that changed the whole landscape. Once. That was all it took. She swallowed hard, voice splintering. "He found the folder. The one you sent." My breath caught. "I didn't send it." Her head snapped up, eyes wide. "But I sent it to the family attorney. Not to you. Not to him. I wanted a witness." Confusion rippled across her face. I reached behind my chair, slid out the thick folder, edges worn now from my hands, the one holding receipts, the revised will summary, credit card fraud records, property inquiry printouts. She took it carefully, like it might burn. "I thought you hated me," she whispered. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I won't be used by you. That's the line." She opened the folder with trembling fingers. Pages of highlighted lines, dates in the margins, my rough warehouse handwriting she'd once copied when forging my signature for field trip slips. "He said you cut me off because you thought I was ungrateful," I told her, "that I asked too many questions, that I didn't respect your marriage." She didn't answer. "Did you even read the airline confirmation before he canceled my seat?" Silence. "Did you know he added himself to my financial accounts?" Slow shake of the head. "Did you know he tried to access the title to this house?" Her eyes flicked up. Stunned. "No, he wouldn't." "He did?" I watched realization bloom like a bruise. Slow, dark, spreading behind her gaze as each layer of his lies peeled back. "I thought you were being overbearing," she said finally, voice barely air. "I was being careful," I replied, "because I've been burned before, and I saw it happening again, this time through you." She stared at the papers, tears slipping free. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know. Can I fix this?" I let the question hang in the cold porch air. Let her feel the weight of it. "You can start by not asking for anything." Her shoulders sagged further. "I don't want your money, Dad. I just want you." The words sounded sweet, but I'd learned. The cost of love without boundaries, pain paid in full. "I want you to get your own bank account," I said, calm, clear. "Separate. No joint anything. Close the one with him. Pull your credit report. Change every password. And I want you to move out." She blinked hard. "I can't afford it right now." "Then ask someone who didn't block me on Facebook." Shock flickered across her face. "You think forgiveness comes without conditions?" I asked. "You think a Starbucks card erases 3 months of silence?" Tears streamed now. She wiped them with her sleeve. "I'm not trying to be cruel," I said softly, "but you need to understand boundaries. I've spent too long letting them slide. Look where it got us." She nodded slowly. "Okay." We stayed there a while, a silence no longer hostile, just hollow, tired. The porch light flickered with the gusty spring wind. Somewhere down the block, a lawnmower sputtered, then died. Buck shifted closer to my boots, chin on his paws. "Where will you go?" I asked finally. "I have a friend, Katie, from work." I nodded once. Relief and sadness tangled together. "You need help packing?" She shook her head. "No, but would you come with me when I get my stuff?" I met her eyes. "I'll wait in the truck." She left that night. Took a pillow under one arm, phone charger stuffed into a tote, the folder clutched tight to her chest like a shield. No suitcase, just enough to leave. I stood in the driveway with Buck sitting sentinel beside me, watching her taillights bleed red into the dark until they were swallowed whole. I didn't wave, didn't cry, just breathed in the damp night air and stayed still. The house felt enormous when I stepped back inside, empty hallways full of echoes. I sat at the kitchen table a while, hands wrapped around a cooling cup of tea I hadn't realized I'd made. 2 days later, an envelope arrived in the mail. Plain white, no return address. Inside, a photograph, one I'd seen before. Me, Sophia, and Craig on her wedding day. All of us smiling, arms around shoulders, the cake behind us. Only now the photo was torn. The corner where Craig stood had been ripped clean away. The next time I saw Craig, he was standing on my front lawn like he owned it. 3 weeks had passed since Sophia left him. She was staying with her friend Katie, just like she'd said she would. She sent me short, careful texts every few days. I'm okay, work's fine. Thanks for checking in. I didn't press for more. If she was finally learning how to stand up on her own, the last thing she needed was another man telling her what to do. But Craig was never built to let things go quietly. It was a Saturday morning, overcast sky pressing low, air damp and cold enough to sting when you breathe deep. The yard was soaked from night rain, the smell of wet earth and old leaves drifting up, the kind of day where light feels flat and gray, as if the whole world forgot to turn itself on. Buck barked twice, that deep, guttural warning bark he only made when he sensed something wasn't right. I stepped onto the porch and saw him. Craig. Standing on my lawn, hands jammed into his coat pockets, a smug grin stretched across his face like a mask. Same expensive sneakers, same calculated, casual stance. Rain had left his hair a little damp, but he didn't seem to care. "Mornin', Frank," he called, like we were neighbors talking about the weather. I stayed on the top step. "What do you want?" He shrugged, rocking slightly on his heels. "Just wanted to talk. Thought we could be civil." I didn't answer. He took a step closer. Buck's growl rumbled low and dangerous. "I think you've misunderstood a few things," Craig said. "You've been getting involved in stuff that isn't your business." "You mean my daughter?" I asked evenly. "My credit accounts? My house?" He gave a dry laugh. "You always did like playing the victim." That's when I saw it. A tiny twitch in his right eye, the restless tapping of his left hand against his thigh. He wasn't confident. He was bluffing. "I'm not here to fight," he said, shifting his weight. "I just want what's fair." "Fair?" I repeated. "She's still my wife, legally. She's entitled to a portion of whatever you give her." I stepped off the porch, slow and deliberate. My boots sank slightly into damp grass. "You're not getting a penny from me." His smile thinned. "She told me about the will," he said, voice sharp now. "I know you cut her out." "I didn't cut her out," I said. "I protected what's mine." He barked a humorless laugh. "You think you're smart? Hiding everything in legal folders. Playing detective. I don't have to play anything, Craig. I've got paper. You've got nothing." That landed. His jaw clenched. He shifted again, eyes flicking toward the street, like he wanted an escape route, but didn't want me to see. "I can still take her back," he said suddenly. "She's confused. Hurt. She needs someone who actually gives a damn." "You mean someone who drains her dry and hits her when she asks too many questions?" For a second his expression cracked, the grin slipping, rage flaring behind his eyes before he forced it back. "You don't get to act like a saint, Frank," he snapped. "You're the one who kept her on a leash her whole life. Never let her grow up." I took one more step forward, steady and quiet. "I gave her everything," I said. "You took everything." We stood there 10 feet apart, the cold wind moving through the trees. Buck snarling softly at my side like a dark, patient shadow. Craig's face twitched. "This isn't over. It is for you." His mouth opened like he wanted to spit something else, but no words came. He turned on his heel, muttered under his breath, and strode toward the street. Fast, shoulders tight. I didn't watch him go. I turned back to the porch, exhaled slow, and picked up the thick envelope I'd prepared earlier in the week. Inside were copies of everything: credit reports, fraud alerts, bank statements, voided checks, each one labeled, tabbed, highlighted. That afternoon I drove through damp gray streets to the Lucas County Sheriff's Office. Rain traced crooked lines down the passenger window as Buck watched from the back seat. The lobby smelled of paper and disinfectant. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. A clerk in a navy sweater sat behind bulletproof glass. "Financial manipulation, identity access. Threats," I said, sliding the envelope through the tray. She didn't ask for drama, just took the folder, nodded once, and began filling out intake paperwork. Back home, I called my attorney. She told me the sheriff's department would follow up within the week. She also reminded me that since Craig had tried to access my property records and used my name on the phone contract, I had grounds for a restraining order. I filed the next morning. Cold courthouse air, the echo of my boots on polished tile, the soft scratch of pens as I signed. Sophia didn't call that week. She texted once, short and careful. "Dad, I know now. Thank you." That was enough. I didn't need more. A few days later, the sheriff's office called. A calm, measured voice on the other end. They'd visited Craig's place, served the restraining order, confirmed the documentation. He hadn't been home, but they left the paperwork taped to his door in bold print. That same evening, my phone lit up. Sophia's name. I answered fast. "He showed up at Katie's," she said, voice shaking. "Banged on the door for 10 minutes, screaming." My heart kicked hard. "Are you safe?" "Yes." "She called the police. They came quick." "Good." I swallowed the urge to ask 1,000 more questions. Silence stretched, then small and broken. "Do you still have that spare room?" I paused, breath catching. "Yeah," I said quietly. "Always." She came back 2 days later. No big scene, no moving truck, just a small duffel bag slung over her shoulder, a handful of books, and a shoebox stuffed with old letters and birthday cards. Ones I'd written her over the years, one still holding a folded $10 bill. She didn't ask for anything else, didn't ask for forgiveness. She just came home. That first night we didn't talk much. I made spaghetti. Simple, cheap, familiar. She washed the dishes afterward, sleeves rolled up, silent except for the clink of plates and the rush of water. Buck patted over and curled at her feet like no time had passed, head resting on her ankle. "Me?" I sat back on the porch with the night air cool on my face, the faint sound of her moving inside the house behind me. Out on the street, the same cracked pavement she'd once raced down on a pink bike shimmered wet from the rain. Back then I'd jog behind her, hand on the seat to keep her upright. Now it was the road she'd taken back to herself. And maybe, just maybe, back to me too. I didn't hear from Craig for almost 2 months after the certified folder landed in his lap. Not a word, not a call, not even one of his smug, needling texts. Just silence. But silence, I've learned, is never neutral. It's either a peace offering or a warning. So I waited. Sophia stayed in the guest room. She built a rhythm, a quiet, careful rhythm. She got a part-time job at the community center 2 blocks over, the one with chipped blue doors and a playground behind it. She came home smelling of crayons and coffee, exhausted but steadier. Some evenings she cooked. Other nights she just cleaned up after I made something simple. Every morning there was a note by the coffee maker, her handwriting small and neat. The same loops I'd once seen on spelling tests and Father's Day cards. "Coffee's ready. I'm off to work. Love you. Picked up groceries. Made chili. See you tonight. Thanks for being patient with me." We didn't talk about what happened, not directly. But the absence of tension filled the house like warm air after a long winter. The quiet wasn't cold anymore. It was calm. Then one Thursday afternoon, a letter arrived. No stamp, no return address, just a single sheet of paper folded once and slipped into my mailbox like a bad secret someone didn't want traced. The handwriting surprised me. Sharp but rushed. Craig's. "Frank, you think you've won. But this isn't over. Sophia will come back to me. You've poisoned her, filled her head with lies. But I know her, and I know what she wants. She wants security, money, protection, things you never really gave her. Don't push this. Craig." I read it once, then again. Then I set it on the counter, picked up my phone, and dialed the sheriff's office. Within an hour, a patrol car eased up the driveway. A deputy, young, quiet, efficient, stepped out, gloves on, evidence bag ready. He took the letter, nodded when I said, "Keep it on file," asked if I wanted to escalate. "No need," I said. "Just document it." The threat wasn't physical. It was pathetic, desperate. But I still made a copy. slid it into the now thick folder, the same folder that had started with one canceled ticket. That night, Sophia and I sat in the living room. The Tigers game hummed low on the TV, filling spaces where words didn't need to go. I handed her the letter. Waited. She didn't cry, didn't shake. She read it slowly, folded it once, then again until it was a small square in her palm. Looked up. I'm going to file for divorce, she said. Quiet, steady. Tomorrow. I studied her face, not searching for fear this time, but for resolve. And I saw it there. You sure? I asked. She nodded. I've never been more sure about anything. I didn't hug her, didn't give a I speech, just met her eyes and said, Good. The next morning she went to the courthouse. She carried the folder, the one I'd built from scraps of betrayal, ticket receipts, credit statements, property record searches, every careful note. What started as proof for myself had become her armor. She filed. He was served the following week. No contest, no countersuit, no threats of court. Craig wanted no part of a paper trail that could become public record. 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was our old family attorney. Frank, she said, I thought you should know. Someone tried to access an earlier version of your will. Craig, I guessed. Yes, she said with a sigh. He sent a letter to my office citing the old document where Sophia was primary beneficiary. He was pushing for future entitlements through private arbitration. I smiled, but there was no joy in it, only relief that I'd stayed ahead. I already updated it, twice, I said. I know, I told him. She paused. He hung up on me. I thanked her. We said goodbye. And that was the last time Craig's name entered my life in any official capacity. Sophia stayed a while longer. 3 months stretched into 6. Life became simple in a way it hadn't been in years. She worked her shifts, brought home leftovers from community potlucks, learned how to budget without anyone manipulating her bank account. I mowed the lawn, cooked dinners, fixed the squeaky porch steps she used to trip on as a kid. Eventually, she found a small apartment across town. 2nd floor, no dishwasher, sunlight spilling across the hardwood every morning. I helped her move in. Just a few boxes, books, dishes, and a worn shoebox full of keepsakes, birthday cards, crayon drawings, a mug I'd given her when she was 12. She placed it carefully on the new kitchen shelf, like planting a flag. We saw each other twice a week, sometimes groceries, sometimes dinner, sometimes just a quiet drive where she watched the passing trees, and I let the radio fill the space. We didn't talk about Craig anymore. We talked about her coworkers, the after-school art program she was helping run, and her new interest in maybe going back to college. One night, late summer, we sat in her little apartment with the windows open. Crickets hummed outside. A neighbor's porch light blinked on and off. She stirred her tea, eyes distant, then looked over. Why didn't you give up on me? I let the question sit, thought about that night on the porch with the canceled ticket, about years of showing up even when it hurt. Finally I said, because I raised you, not him. Her eyes softened. She didn't reply, just nodded once, quiet acceptance written across her face, and went back to stirring her tea. Seasons turned. Fall came back soft and amber. Leaves scattered across my driveway like old letters. The air cooled enough for Buck to chase squirrels without panting. Life felt steady. One chilly evening, I opened the mailbox and found a small envelope. This one had a stamp, no name on the return address, just a scribbled, from a friend. Inside was a check, made out to me, for $2,172.80. The memo line carried one word, honeymoon. I stood there a long time, the quiet street lit gold by a street lamp, the paper trembling slightly in my hand. I folded the check and tucked it into my wallet. Never cashed it, didn't need to. She'd already repaid me in full. Because some debts aren't financial. Some debts are paid back in quiet mornings, unguarded laughter, and the slow, patient rebuilding of trust. One Sunday we drove out to Maumee Bay. She brought sandwiches in a small cooler. I brought Buck, who hung his head out the window the whole way, ears flapping in the breeze. We sat on a bench facing the water, watching silver ripples catch late afternoon light. A sailboat drifted by far out, white against the muted sky. She rested her head on my shoulder. "I'm not the same person," she said. "I know," I said. "Neither am I." She tilted her face up toward me, eyes clearer than I'd seen in years. "Are you happy now?" I thought about it, about the voicemail that started it all, the folder, the silence, the reckoning, and the long road back to this quiet seat by the water. Then I looked out over the lake, sky streaked with soft gold and steel blue, and said, "Yeah, I think I finally am." We stayed there until the sun slid below the horizon. A car passed behind us, headlights sweeping long shadows across the trail. The air cooled. Buck huffed and stretched. I pulled my coat tighter. Then we stood, slow and unhurried, and walked back toward the lot. Gravel crunched under our boots. Buck trotted ahead, nose to the wind. I looked once over my shoulder, at the lake, the fading sun, the empty bench, then climbed into the truck and turned the key. The road opened up ahead. No more detours, no more delays, just forward. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.